Hey, Garage Gym athletes, before we get to the show, I wanted to check to see if you knew that we are on YouTube. We've been on the platform for a while, but only more recently started to get serious about some video content. So while the podcast will meet most of your needs, some things simply need a visual explanation. So if you want more on concurrent training, programming, garage gyms, head over to YouTube, search Garage Gym Athlete, and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to connecting with you on another platform. All right, let's get to the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jeremy here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Not too much, man. What's going on in your neck of the woods in Texas? Tejas, as they say.
It's raining after like a 10-year drought, so that's happening right now, which is pretty nice.
Hey, it rained here too, but we haven't really had droughts.
Yeah, you have like perfect weather, never gets hot, like whatever. No one wants to explore that, all right? No, I'm just messing around. Well, today, just for all the listeners, we're going to be going over essentially what I'm calling a concurrent training study, but it's not about concurrent training. Pretty awesome one, in my opinion. We'll be talking about some things that we've changed our mind on in health and fitness over the years. And we'll go over Meet Yourself Saturday. But before we do that, we'll give some quick updates about our training lives in general. Joe, how is life, man? How is fatherhood treating you?
Pretty fine. But
Pretty fine.
the bar. Pretty fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just fine. It's not like great, but it's pretty fine.
Yeah. If I had like a meter,
I mean, yeah,
it's above the middle, right?
Yeah, exactly. Batting like 75%, so it's pretty good. Yeah. I running a little bit more. I'm still doing the body weight, no gear programming because I'm just taking it easy with my back. I'm pretty much fully recovered, but there's still some days I wake up, especially like just speaking of the kid, having to lay with him in certain ways and pick him up in certain ways, that there's only like so much I can put my body in a great position back wise. So it's been a little bit slow to heal a little bit, but doing all my PT stuff and sticking with body weight. And which also made me think of I might do a trail race. I'm not really sure. I've been looking at them in the area, and there's one literally 9 days from now. I haven't signed up yet, but I might today. Who knows? This is just a 10K trail. I don't really know they don't really have much information on like the elevation, the ascent or descent, what I'd go through. But like it's a 10K. I just ran a 10K this morning just because like around the neighborhood, which it was just a street one, not a trail, so that'd be completely different. So kind of looking at doing some sort of races just so I can do something, have something on my training radar, and just kind of like going through things. It's kind of nice to have something to work towards.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that one that Jason Wood's doing that I really, really, really want to do, but it's one in Arizona that's a mix of trail racing and sandbag carries, which is just sounds perfect, but I don't know if it's just timing wise if that'll work out. So yeah, I'm definitely looking to do some trail races, at least to do something around my area, because they always have stuff going on in this part of the world, in this part of the US. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, let us know how it goes. Why not recover from a back injury and just go straight into a trail race? I think it's a great idea.
I mean, it's just running. It's just I'm not.
No, I agree.
I'm not squatting. It has nothing to do with my ankle. Well, not really.
How hard could it? How bad could it be? Right?
Exactly.
Famous
yeah,
last words.
Yeah. Well, I'll find a way to get injured somehow. I'll probably mess up my ankle going over some sort of like uneven ground. Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be raining that day. You're just gonna like slip awkwardly and catch yourself and be like, "Oh, no." I won't wish that on you. I hope it goes great, and I hope you come in first place. That's what my real.
Yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening. First place people don't lift weights.
No. Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, for me, same old. Just been plugging away in the gym. We did have a slight reprieve from the heat, but kids are back in full swing of school, and 3 kids. They're each in like 2 activities. Like whatever life I had is completely gone. So yeah, we're just running them around to different things, still fitting training in, and it's been good, man. I'm just staying consistent. Looking forward for the 300 challenge to be over. I mean, it's fine, but some of the 300 challenges, like just slight annoyance, you know? It's like
Like getting
I don't know, these
299 minutes, and then
no, I've actually been fine with, like, time-wise because 'cause I've been pretty consistent on hitting, like, 6 days a week, and if I'm doing 6 days a week, 300 minutes is no problem. If it's 5 days a week, that's when it becomes, like, a
yeah.
little bit more of a challenge, but it's just, like, these little things, like and I've talked about it before, like, I really need to include just and I feel like this is just me, like, I get tight really easily. My hamstrings will lock up, if I'm not, like, on top of it, and I'm generally always been that way, but the 300 challenge and, one of the issues is each training session having to be 300 calories, and I prefer one of my training sessions per week to be, like, a 40 to 50-minute, like, mobility session, but that doesn't get you 300 calories. So I ditched that for a while, which is always bad to like ditch something that's good for you in the sake of namesake of a challenge or whatever. So
Mhm.
those are the only things I'm annoyed with. Otherwise, a general training day has been fine, especially with the heat. I'm normally at like 150 calories, 100 calories in by the warm up. So that's been fine. But no, it's all good. I hopefully all the athletes are still doing well. I've seen the check-in post. It's been thinning out a little bit more on the monthly check-ins in the group. But I'm assuming people are just forgetting to check in, but they're still out there crushing it. So my challenge to all the garage gym athletes out there who are still part of the challenge, go into the Facebook group and let us know how it's going. I haven't been as active on social media lately. That's just kind of like I was taking a break. Um, as I think most people should do from time to time. But I want to get back involved and see some more community posts. So let us know how the 300 challenge is going for you if you're one of our athletes and doing the 300 challenge. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you can go to dailyoverdecades.com. It'll forward you to our challenge. You can technically join at any time, but you're no longer eligible for the prizes. But you can at least learn what the challenge is about. So
And like, if you feel like you've been doing bad, I feel like I've set the tone of doing bad on this challenge. Week one, I like
you're
didn't
like,
even
I'm
work
just
out
gonna
the first 2
skip
weeks.
January and
Yeah,
really challenge myself. That's what kind of what
yeah.
you did.
Figure it out from there. I'm still figuring it out, so I don't even know where I'm at now. I still have my sheet still updates, but I just stopped checking it because I'm just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna keep on keeping on, and we'll see what happens in the fall if I have to go, 60 days straight or something." Um, I haven't even hit 200 yet. I don't know how many days I have left. So yeah,
I got to be at
I'm in,
200.
I'm
I
in the 180s. It looks like.
Oh, if you're in the 180s, I'm well into the 200s.
Yeah, yeah. You're probably like 220 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm at, but how I've, just talking about goal setting 101 is like I just micro the hell out of this thing. Is like I rarely ever look at how many training sessions I've done or anything. I just micro what I have to do today and then micro look on a weekly basis. Other than that, I haven't been looking at the big picture stuff. And my favorite thing about the Garmin is if you go to it's like you can go to last activity. It's like one of the I don't know what you'd call it. Like you can pull it up. And then it'll show your last activity, but it will also show you if you're doing the same activity every time. So if you're doing like running and then like lifting as different activities, it won't do this for you. But I always keep it the same. It'll tell you how much total time you've done this week. And so I don't have to go anywhere. I just like look on
Hmm.
Sunday, I make sure that says 5 or more, and then that's it. I'm done. Like Monday clicks over and I'm like, all right, let's do it again. And I think that's the only real way I could get this done. If I was like looking at like, okay, well, I just have to work out every day from now until the rest of the year to get this done. That'd be very discouraging.
Yeah. I haven't noticed that in Garmin yet, and of course, the one time I'm not wearing mine. But I do like taking a weekly look into my things. I like to have into like my routines. I know every week I like to hit at least two solid like strength focus days, at least one run day. Um, on top of the one run day, it would be so it would either be one zone 2 day or one like conditioning focused interval day. So that's 4 days right there, and then a fifth day of whatever else I'm doing. I mean, the programming will obviously dictate like how I what I do each week, but that's kind of the boxes that I want to make sure I check, especially on extra days because there's 4 days per week, and usually the program will have more strength focused days anyway, just because of how we program. And then on Thursdays usually a zone 2 day, and then maybe Saturday will be a interval day if they weren't hit during that week. But that's kind of how I balance it out, depending on how the programming shakes out. And that's like every week. It's like, okay, I need to have my good run day. I need to have a good zone 2 day and make sure I hit enough strength. And then that's just how the week works out anyway. So that's kind of how I approach my weeks training wise, just to make sure I'm remaining balanced and just to know that like, okay, well, that's what I'm doing today.
You know, what's funny is my brother. I started texting him on Sunday nights, like the workout schedule for the week, just to like in general terms, like strength day, conditioning day, just not the full workouts, just so he knows what's coming up. I've only been doing that for a few weeks, but I'm now realizing that ahead information is making him skip days. He's not like intention. He's not like, oh yeah, I'm just skipping today. He's like, oh, I got this thing going on. I'm like, you don't normally miss Wednesdays, but I
I'm
did
just gonna
mention hard
flip flop it.
conditioning. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm just like switching it up. He's gonna show up today. I'm gonna be like, yeah,
Make a
I
day.
I actually didn't work out yesterday either, or I moved the days around, so you get to do it. So I used to do that too when I was in the Air Force when I'd run PT. Never, ever would I tell people what we were doing, and it'd frustrate the hell out of them. They wouldn't know until we showed up. And then I did try publishing the schedule a few times, and similar thing. Airmen were sick, and so I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Well, I'm saving it. I'm just saving it for the next
Yeah.
one." Yeah, people.
Just write every day. Surprise, surprise,
Yeah.
surprise.
What's today? I don't know, but it sucks. All right, let's get into the study. So this is a pretty cool study. The name of the study is Muscle Strengthening Activities Are Associated with Lower Risk in Mortality in Major Non-Communicable Diseases, a systematic review and meta-analysis of cohort studies. It was done in 2020. All right,
Shoot.
we've covered a lot of these types of studies, meta-analysis and systematic review. So it's a study of studies. They're looking at all these other studies, right? And so they have, in this one specifically, they have 16 different studies that met the eligibility criteria. And I'm going to read. Actually, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to read kind of a good chunks of the abstract from the study because it's just so there's not a lot of deciphering in this study. And I found that kind of with these study of studies, you don't have to pull out as much. I mean, we can like tease it out a little bit here and there, but this one's just very straightforward. And so the overall objective was to quantify the association between muscle strengthening activities and the risk of non-communicable diseases in mortality in adults, independent of aerobic activity. So they're trying to kind of weed that out. The eligibility criteria for selecting the studies was prospective cohort studies that examined the association between muscle strengthening activities and health outcomes in adults aged over or greater than or equal to 18 years old without any severe health conditions. So relatively healthy people. Now let's just jump straight to the results. It said that muscle strengthening activities were associated with a 10 to 17% lower risk of all cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, total cancer, diabetes, and lung cancer. No association was found between muscle strengthening activities and the risk of some site specific cancer, colon, kidney, bladder, and pancreatic cancer. So they're saying total cancer is decreased, but when it comes to some of those one offs like colon, kidney, bladder, and pancreatic, they didn't notice any kind of relationship between strength training helping uh, the reduction in those. And it said J shaped associations with maximum risk reduction, approximately 10 to 20%, at approximately 30 to 60 minutes a week of muscle strengthening activities were found for all cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and total cancer, whereas an L shaped association showing a large risk reduction at up to 60 minutes a week of muscle strengthening activities was observed for diabetes. So, last thing, combined muscle strengthening and aerobic activities were associated with a lower risk of all cause cardiovascular disease and total cancer mortality. So, to summarize, what they were saying was essentially you could do as little as 30 minutes a week of strength training, and that is associated with a 10 to 20% lower risk of all cause mortality. And then if you add aerobic training to that muscle strengthening activity, it was associated with a 40% lower risk of all cause mortality. And I think that that's that's why I'm calling it a concurrent training study, because they're basically like, hey, if you do strength stuff and aerobic stuff as opposed to one or the other, that seems to be the biggest bang for your buck. And I think that it's really cool that they're pulling this out. Um, there are some other things I want to talk about that I looked at that were, I don't know, they might be open-ended questions on my end, but overall, Joe, what did you think of this study?
It was definitely interesting. I didn't realize they would have. I never would have thought to put strength, like muscle strengthening, and then like sicknesses and these diseases, and I mean diabetes kind of makes sense. It's just along with fitness, but so I liked it a lot. I'm surprised there's so many studies that were a part of it. They always with these systematic reviews start with thousands, hundreds of or whatever studies, and then boil down to 16 total studies. But out of those, there were hundreds of thousands of people because some of them were
Yeah,
all, and there was all different types of studies because it was like there was interview form, questionnaire, observational, all different sorts of, which I think gives it a good range of not just like, hey, we have this study of 10 people and then this study of 12 people and this study of 20 people, and that's just what we did. It was like they covered a whole lot of different areas and bases, and um, some of them had nutritional guidance. Some of them had, they were uh, years ranging were from 2012 to 2020. All studies considered other non-strength training. I think one or two didn't have anything, but they considered other non-strength training, which is good for comparison. Um, and I went through and broke down like they did specifically find some that would measure, like not all the studies measured the same thing. So there were 7 studies that found the 15% lower risk in all cause mortality. 6 studies were not, or the nonlinear 40 having like 40 minutes per week were the best, and then the J shape brought it back to all of them. It seemed like every single one had the J shape coming back to 130 as much as it was the same as 0 minutes, which was really interesting. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that as we go along. There were 3 studies that did that did strength and aerobic. So they looked at not only just strength training and aerobic. And that was the 40% lower all cause mortality, which that was obviously. I mean, you kind of expect with aerobic training that like diabetes and cardiovascular disease to be a whole lot better for non was it for all cause mortality. But the fact that the I think the biggest or a big surprise was that the L-shaped curve that the diabetes had, like all of them had the J-shaped curve, but I'm curious as to why diabetes had an L-shaped curve, which means like there was a steep decline up till about 60 minutes of strength training per week, and then it basically plateaued and leveled off. But it still kind of went down after that. Like there wasn't a going back up, but it just kept on leveling off. So that was really interesting that it had such a dramatic effect. And it's only 60 minutes, and all of these started or got some of their peak uh benefit at around 30 to 40 minutes. So you figure 40 to 60 minutes a week, which that's like 1 or 2 training days for us. It's
right.
kind of like we always hit that. So I think the biggest takeaway for this is it's like it's not our athletes that I think this will benefit the most from. It's our athletes that are listening to this that already do this that can convince somebody, hey, all you need to do is 30 minutes of some resistance training a week. Just like take 30 minutes, do a 30-minute resistance training, strength training workout, or like 2 20-minute sessions, and your, you know, risk is going to go from 20 to 40% better, like or lower, whatever how you want to phrase it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway of like it's not the athletes that need to know this; it's the athlete's family or the athlete's friends that they're like, I want to get you to start doing stuff, but it's so hard to get anybody that like you're especially family that you're related to start either lifting weights or doing something. And it's like you can tell them all the reasons under the sun, but they're just like, well, I'm just gonna go for a walk or I'm just gonna go this. And it's like being active is fine, but there's still other things that you need to make sure you do. And the fact that this was specifically on strength training and how it can benefit all of these different things in such a low amount of buy-in basically per week was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's a big takeaway. It really doesn't take that much, which should be super encouraging for most people. If you're just hitting 3 to 4 days a week of some sort of concurrent training program, you're good to go. And I think there are diminishing returns. Because if you are following our programming and you're doing pretty well at it, so you've been consistent, you might be in like the top 10% of like worldwide fitness. You know what I mean? When we're talking about every human being on the planet. And or we can even call it top 25. But then there aren't, and you would be getting every benefit of what the study is like kind of pointing out, like you're decreasing your chance of death from these particular types of diseases, and you're going to live longer, barring nothing else crazy happens. But if you get twice as fit as you are now, that doesn't keep doubling. Like there's not a continued doubling effect, right? There are diminishing returns. And so to your point on the diabetes reduction, so there was an L-shaped kind of reduction. So dramatic reduction up to like an hour. And then after that, there's kind of like an asymptote that like it still continues to go down, but is no longer as dramatic. And that kind of makes sense because if you, it goes all the way up to 300 minutes per week of muscle strengthening activities, which still isn't that crazy. But between 1 hour and 5 hours of strength work in a week, it doesn't reduce your all cause mortality an overwhelming amount. So if you want to reduce your chance of diabetes, it's not that difficult. And I think muscle strengthening makes a lot of sense. Like your body uses a lot of glycogen. I think it would help with like insulin and how your body uses that, and how your body stores and uses glucose. Like, so that all makes a lot of sense to me. But what's crazy is the other three graphs. If you were to look at this study, and you can go look at this study, we generally link to them in the show notes. If you want to go to garagegymathlete.com, check out the blog, you can check out the study. But this one, some of the studies are paid. Like you have, you have to, whatever, pay $30 to go see it. But this one's 100% free. So you could look at all the charts and graphs that we're looking at and see the back end. But there's this J-shaped curve. And we've talked about the J-shaped curve in relation to fitness in other areas. And a J-shaped curve means that, just think of a J, right? It starts at a certain degree, it lowers, and then it goes up. And the other J-shaped curve we've investigated on the podcast had to do with, I think it was like upper respiratory infections and general illnesses. And it was, if you were sedentary, you're like here, you get sick X amount, right? And then if you put in about 300 minutes per week, which is like, seems to be like the golden thing, golden number there, you get sick half as many times as the sedentary person. And then on the upper end of the spectrum, the people putting in like 15 hours per week of training, they're getting sick twice as much as the sedentary person. And it's just crazy. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with overtraining, under recovery, and I don't know which one it is, because I really feel like overtraining is actually really hard to do if you're recovering really well. So sometimes I think that there are some hard chargers who get obsessed with fitness, but they're not actual, like, they're not legit athlete. They're not a professional athlete. Let me put it that way. They're not a professional athlete who's getting paid for it, but they're like a lawyer who super type A, and they want to run 100 miles a week. You know what I'm saying? Like they want to go to marathons and be competitive in their age bracket and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with doing those things. But if you just live that lifestyle to where you're working, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day in a very demanding job, and then you're also putting in that kind of training volume, your ability to recover properly from that is not, you don't have a high chance of doing that. And so that's what I think is happening a lot of times when we look at that J-shaped curve. I really feel like people are just under recovering. And it does greatly stress your immune system when you do a lot of training. So I think that's what happens. But to put it in relation to cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality, everything they're talking about, and there still be a J-shaped curve. I mean, the reason I say I'm going to probably leave this one open-ended is because I'd love to talk to somebody who's way smarter than me about this and see what they think, because I wouldn't think this is what you'd see when we're looking at all-cause mortality, total cancer, cardiovascular disease. All three of them have a J shape. The total cancer is a lot less J-shaped, but the all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease are very J-shaped. And again, when I mean J-shaped, I mean, in this case, it would be 0 minutes per week means that you have a regular chance of death from all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, or cancer. And then when you get to 40 minutes per week up to, let's say, 100 minutes per week, that's kind of like a sweet spot of significant reduction, right? We're talking about the 10 to 20% reduction just from muscle strengthening activities, 40% if you're adding aerobic to that. But then once you pass, it looks like 130-ish minutes, 130, 140 minutes, they all jump up. They go beyond the regular risk. So it goes above the standard. And so that's for all cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and total cancer. The risk goes back up to beyond what would be a sedentary person or like a no activity, 0 minutes per week person. And it just blows
That's what
my
I'm
mind.
most curious about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't answer that. They talk about it. They're like, they straight up say in their results, like, this warrants further investigation, but that wasn't their outcome. But we've seen it multiple times. And I've heard a lot of people, smart people, try and argue that there is no real J-shaped curve when it comes to fitness. In that when you really pick the studies apart, like whatever. But the only people I've ever heard say that are obsessed with fitness. And it's almost like they don't want to believe it. You know what I mean? And so I just have to look at like what's in front of me. This is not a one-off study. This is a systematic review and meta-analysis of a lot of freaking people. And we're still seeing the J-shaped curve. So concurrent training is awesome. Takeaway number one, concurrent training is absolutely awesome. If you're hitting about 300 minutes per week of a combination of aerobic training and strength training, I mean, you're doing so much for your health and your longevity. But then once you get past that range, we don't know. And I would like to say that it's probably not that bad. I do think that it would have to be excessive in nature to be bad. Like I don't see why it would be a problem. I understand like heart demands are different. Like arrhythmias, all these things if you're training excessively. But these are happening. They're noticing it at like 200 minutes per week. And I'm just like, that's not a lot of time. But it also makes me think that you shouldn't spend too much time in any one modality, which was my ultimate second guess at why this could be happening. So we're looking at muscle strengthening activities. And if you're putting in, let's just say 300 minutes of only strength work in a week, I'm going to start to maybe call you a powerlifter. And I don't want to throw a lot of shade on powerlifters right now, but not known for being the healthiest population, right? Like, I mean, I don't know if anyone's even going to disagree with that. They want to make weight. They're doing that with milkshakes and burgers. Like, they don't have the healthiest diets. And again, this is not scientific. So let me science hat is off. This is just the Jerred Moon. I'm taking a shot in the dark here. But I just feel like if you're a meathead and you're basically only doing strength stuff and you don't care as much about your diet or anything else, you just want to be able to lift heavy, I feel like it lends itself to a more unhealthy lifestyle. And again, that's just me. That's what I'm saying. And I know not all powerlifters are like that, but I do think that it comes that way sometimes. So that's my only guess at why there could possibly be a J-shaped curve here, because this J-shaped curve is in relation to muscle strengthening activities and total time in a week. And so that's my best guess without looking at more scientific studies or them even having been done. So yeah, that's my guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I was curious about the minutes. So whenever we do aerobic work, it's easier to measure minutes because it's like, well, you start running, start the timer. You stop running, you stop the timer. The minutes are set. It's like it's pretty definite, like the parameters, black and white. With strength training, how are they doing the minutes? Because a set you can be lifting for 10 or 15 seconds, then resting for 2 to 3 minutes. Well, you're not actually doing strength training for the 2 to 3 minutes. So are they counting the rest, or are they counting the entire strength session? Because you might only spend 10 minutes in a 10 to 15 minutes in a given hour actually doing strength training in between rest intervals. So I don't know how. I'm curious as to how they were calculating or measuring the minutes because that could make a huge difference on 40 minutes of strength training could actually have been 3 hours of elapsed time. But like 130 minutes could have been 5 to 6 hours of a elapsed time in the gym. So that's why like it's interesting because the bodybuilding bros will go to the gym for 90 minutes to 2 hours and they just lift, but they're not really lifting the whole time.
I don't think that they would be counting it that way. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised with a scientist who like doesn't understand fitness. That's like, we're just going to count time under the bar. But if you were to like, push those numbers out, if we were at 10 minutes of actual strengthening per 1 hour muscle or one hour training session, you have to be training 30 hours a week to hit 300 minutes. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's what they'd be doing, but
No,
I wouldn't be
I think
surprised.
rest between sets. Yeah, rest between sets would make sense. It was just one thing that I was kind of curious about. But just going back to the concurrent training thing and like health, I like to shine a light on this one every once in a while because this is a really awesome study that we did probably 2 years ago now or a year and a half ago now. But it was on the uh it was related to COVID and the Korean study to where they looked at everybody's medical history and people that did, aerobic that were whenever they regularly went for their checkups, that their medical history is like people that did cardio a lot had this much better, like less for like less time in the ICU and less
Hmm.
symptomatic. People did strength training had this much, and then people who did both strength and conditioning had like the absolute best, most lowest time in the ICU, lowest symptoms, all of these things, and it was like thousands and thousands of people that they looked at all of their medical history, and it's not like they were conducting an interview; they were looking at the actual documentation of what they've gone through. So just more evidence on having both strength conditioning and a mixture of everything to have the best health out there and making sure other people do as well.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it's awesome because one, I think everyone lands on concurrent training at some point. Even like I think popular power lifters, you see them retire and then they're doing both. They're doing conditioning and they're doing strength training, and I just I don't think it's really up for debate at this point. But it's cool to see how much the scientific literature is coming along because this was done in 2022. I mean, this is a relatively brand new study, right? And it's these studies you can take a lot more firmly because when there are a systematic review and meta-analysis, and this is the thing I hate about nutritional science and science in general, is there's always some jackass with a PhD who's like, well, did you look at this? Well, one little, but oh, you didn't notice that number in there. You don't know what you're talking about. It's like, dude, we have to take the results of the study like at what they are. Like you don't need to be a genius and like pull this shit apart to like understand it at that level because this is a study of studies, and so you don't have to go that deep. If they made that much of a mistake in a systematic review and meta-analysis of 16 different studies, that would be crazy. I can see that happening in like one-off studies when there's like you were saying earlier, like there's 15 people and it's a nutritional study. Yeah, let's pick it apart and see. And we found out they were just doing like nutritional recall instead of actually like in a nutritional ward and stuff, right? But this one is pretty concrete in my opinion, and I think that if this doesn't convince people to add some conditioning to their strength training if they're doing that, or add some strength training to their running program or whatever, like you just got to be doing both to some degree, and it doesn't even have to be that much. Like if you're a runner, you only need to put in like one 30-minute strength training session, and you're at the benefits required here. So that's basically it for the study. Did you have anything else, Joe?
No, but I was just gonna say on top of your nitpickiness, as long as you know how to read a forest plot, then you're fine. But if you don't know
Right.
how to read a forest plot, then you just
Yeah,
can't you just can't say anything.
I get frustrated with that stuff, man. Um it's become this is true in the political world. This is true now in the scientific world, in the fitness world, nutrition. Facts are becoming almost impossible to state because everyone has their own view and opinion of what a fact is. Um, and I'm not getting involved with any of that crap. I'm not arguing with people about this stuff. It's just like, hey, I saw this. I saw the research. I think it's fine. Moving on. I'll let other people argue about it. But let's hop into the topic.
What's up, guys? Did you know that I wrote a book? Kind of crazy that it's out there and I almost never talk about it. The book is called Killing Comfort. And what you may not know is that I just lowered the price of the book to the lowest allowable level on Amazon. And you might be asking, why would I do such a thing? And the answer is because I want to put my money where my mouth is and prove I am here to help as many people as I possibly can. And I won't have the price of the book stand in the way. It's also on Audible if you want to hear me read it, but I can't actually adjust the price there. It's automatically set by Amazon on that platform. Either way, you can go to Amazon or killingcomfort.com and get the book at its lowest possible price. If you like the book, I'd love a positive review and 5-star rating if you see fit on Amazon. Leaving your review is a great way to help us help more people. All right, back to the show.
So changing your mind is kind of the topic for today. I like to do this every once in a while. Really isn't the first time we've done it. We've done some variation of this at least once or twice since the inception of the podcast. I think it's good just to like kind of review, hey, what have you changed your mind on? Because I don't pride myself in being dogmatic in anything other than the fact that I think concurrent training is the way to train. And I don't think that will change, but who knows? Maybe in 15 years, I will change my mind on that, but I really don't see that happening. But I think it shows a lot of, some people see changing your mind as a weakness. Like you're not, steadfast in your beliefs or whatever, but that's not how this works. That's not how being good at your job in this industry works. You're going to have to change your mind on things and look at research and get experience and possibly change your mind on things. I think that changing your mind is actually just a way to show personal and professional growth and not that you were wrong and should be embarrassed about it. So let's start with you, man. Is there anything that you have changed your mind on ever? No, like in health and fitness, since we started working together, more recently, anything in general?
I mean, speaking of like learning more, I think there's always going to be a pendulum swing back the other way. So I think in like 20 years, 20, 30 years, somebody's gonna be like, if you just train one body part a day, you can really get that thing ripped and jacked. And like, and it's just gonna be the bodybuilding splits are gonna come back, and it's gonna be this cycle. But I think the main thing is how I changed my mind of is that it's constantly changing. Like the fact that every year or, all the time we're learning new stuff, and like everything is just that evolution of how everything changes. You think you always think you have a great understanding of something for a while, especially if it works for you for months, years, and then you learn something new and you're just like, holy shit, all right, well, I guess I didn't. And then just getting used to change in your mind, honestly, it's like kind of been the biggest thing to me, which I don't know if it seems like a cop out, but I think that's still just one of the biggest changes. Would you concur?
Yeah. I think we are learning a lot. I'd say specifically what I have changed my mind on the most, I would say from start of doing everything I've been doing in the fitness industry to now, would be on high intensity training in general. And I think there's a lot of great research on high intensity training stating that it's a good thing, right? And, just super beneficial, very effective. And it's more recently, and we've kind of talked about some of it, where we've shown that there are some downsides to high intensity training. And I don't think that's what, for me, is necessarily where I've changed my mind. I think I've changed my mind on what high intensity is. Because for me, I'm a very intense person, very intense. Like when I get in the sauna, it's as hot as it can go. When I get in the cold pool, I want it as cold as it can go. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it 100%. There's no like halfway doing anything with me. And so if you say high intensity training, I treat that as like a near death experience. And so I think some of the high intensity training problems come from like your own personal definition of what that is. Because when you look at the like science on high intensity training, they might just mean like my warm up. You know what I mean? Like, which is like more interval based. They're like, oh yeah, that's high intensity training. But to me, I'm like, no, it's not actually, because I feel like I'm still alive, and so it's not high intensity. So I think that that's one thing I've had to change my mind on, is like where the line is, because I think personally I can push it way too far and way too hard. And it's kind of like been a skill I've developed both mentally and physically that actually was just more detrimental than anything else. And then that led me into looking into other things. And it wasn't just me. Like I saw this in athletes and people on the team and family members and stuff. Like it just high intensity all the time is a bad thing. I really don't think that it's a good thing. But if you would have asked me, I don't know, 10 years ago, anything about high intensity training, I would have told you it's absolutely a good thing. I would have shown you all the research, and I wouldn't have really forecasted there being a negative to high intensity training, other than probably like the possibility of getting injury if you had sloppy form. But there's a lot more metabolic demand than that, and cardiovascular problems and other things that can come. And I don't think people should be scared of it. That's not my goal. I think it's just balance, like everything else, balancing out what your training schedule looks like. And it just shouldn't, if your training schedule looks like high intensity today, and then the rest of the month is all the same thing, like high intensity every day, that's where it's a problem. I think doing it once a week, twice a week, a couple times a month, not a big deal. It's when you're doing it repeated, it's a big deal. So I think that's the biggest thing I've changed my mind on: high intensity training.
It's always hard to convince other people who don't know that yet. Like, no, you shouldn't like do these workouts that are super hard. And it's hard to I find it sometimes harder especially like people that work out of the garage and like around the neighborhood, especially now. It's hard to tell them that, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do these high intensity workouts all the time. And it sounds like I'm saying you probably shouldn't try so hard when you're working out, which is kind of true, but also it's not. And it's like, without going into down the rabbit hole into like, you know, getting into the weeds and teaching a seminar and telling them about like hormones and stuff. But that's definitely like just related on what you're saying. Really hard to tell other people about that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we live in a world where it's celebrated, right? Like we live in a world where there's David Goggins, and even in this community, David Goggins is a demigod. He's like, don't thwart what he says, and he's got some great stuff on mindset and whatever else. But if you actually look at it, ladies and gentlemen listening to this who are huge David Goggins fans, you do not want to be David Goggins. You don't. That's it. Like, you don't want to be him. He has to stretch like 5 hours a day because he pushed his body so hard for so long and neglected those things that he's having to now fix them. And there's nothing wrong with David Goggins. I think he's an amazing human being, has done some incredible things. But just when we do this, like, no, Goggins says push it and go all out every time. It's like, you don't want to be that person. Like, you don't. Like, you're a mom or a dad, you have 3 kids, 1 kid, whatever, like in a full-time job. You're just not David Goggins at the end of the day, and you maybe shouldn't listen to his advice. And I say things like that, and it can even offend people, right? They're like, you know what, you're getting soft or whatever. But it's like, no, I'm just getting real. Like you need to know who you are, what your goals are, what you can handle. And yeah, if you tend to be more mentally weak than other people, then yeah, maybe you need a healthy dose of Goggins to like fix your mindset. I'm all about that, but I don't think and Goggins is one example, right? There are a lot of people like who have that kind of mentality or social media accounts or whatever, but you're not that person. And you also haven't had the training history. Like Goggins can go push himself as hard as he wants today and run a marathon a day, but he's also been training for like 30 years. Have you? So like you just don't want to go down that road. And I think it's way too over celebrated, that mentality these days.
Yeah. So getting into specifically another thing that I definitely changed my mind on is related to conditioning with, not necessarily high intensity on the other end though. And that is doing the lower intensity zone 2 type of conditioning that I never even thought of doing. That it always seemed like, going at that low of a pace, I didn't really almost seem to point to. I remember years ago, especially being on active duty or anything, I wouldn't go for runs. I would just go to the field and do sprints, just one run, wind sprints. I even had like a parachute that I did parachute sprints, and like that's good for speed, but that's basically all I was doing was just training speed. I wasn't actually working on anything else. And like being active Air Force or even the Guard, every year I still have to run my mile and a half time, and like even doing all those sprints and staying active and doing strength training and all that, like my mile and a half time is basically a straight line for most of my career.
Never improved.
It wasn't even, yeah, it was also always within 5 seconds of each other year to year all the time. But then only like the last few years has it actually started to dip down for a little bit, and like that's getting older and doing more zone 2, and it's just interesting that that sort of change. So speed for speed, but that's not all conditioning. And having, zone 2 has been the biggest change. I mean, I think it's been the biggest change in like our programming community as well. But that's been a huge one that I've just taken and ran with it, so to speak, and implemented a lot of, and also try and spread the good word too for other people as well.
Yeah, man, zone 2, I think that's a huge one for me as well. And it's just been interesting how that's all come about through like how it got ingrained into our community. All started when I did that keto experiment, like in, was it like 2017 or 2018 or something like that? And I just dove so deep on like energy system training and like how they're utilized and then how to build a proper base and stuff. And it is just so eye-opening once you kind of realize how to properly build an aerobic engine. Because I was exactly like you. When I was in the military, I basically did a lot of strength training, and then I would do 30-30 intervals, like anywhere between 6 to 20 of those, once or twice a week. That was my conditioning. And what that did for me was kind of the same thing. Like I was able to get a decent mile and a half time because that's what the Air Force runs. But it was a practice in mental toughness and not conditioning. It was like doing those 30-30s kept me just enough in the game to go like in the 9s, like between the 9 and 10 minute mile and a half. But I never felt how I felt when I have a really solid base from like zone 2. I didn't know that you could run like a 9:30 mile and a half and not feel winded. Back then, before I really got into the industry and everything, I just thought like some people have it, some people don't, like, because even when I started running more, which was all like closer to when I was getting out of the military, my times weren't really getting that much better. And that's because I ran like in zone 4 all the time. I was like, I'd go on a 3-mile run, but it would be like a zone 4 3-mile run. I didn't really track heart rate as much back then, but like I just know from how it felt, because when I'd finish like at the end of the 3 miles, I'd be like dead. I'd be like, holy crap, that was the worst thing ever. And that's not how a 3-mile run should be. If you're just trying to stick in zone 2, you should be like, I feel like I could probably do some more. So yeah, I've changed my mind. If we talk about just my fitness career journey, whatever, like, yeah, zone 2 has been a big one for me as well.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I mean, some of the ones that I kind of thought of were strength, and I mean, it kind of goes the same effect as zone 2. Doing submax effort on strength, you don't always need to just burn out and hit it hard. If you're, we have several studies talked about reps in reserve and all of these things that have shown really good progress. So again, submax effort and more about intent than anything else.
It's funny how much fitness is just so correlated to like how you should probably live your life. Now, I'm not big on telling people how they should live their life. I just don't feel qualified to tell people that. But if I had to take like a fatherly advice, like something I would tell my kids would be like, just maintain a pace of work and life that you can maintain. Like that's the pace. Like the pace should be just a maintainable pace for life and in all things. But if you just stay focused in the right areas, you will see success in that area. I don't care if that's like finance, business, your strength, fitness, whatever it is. Like it just takes a little bit of focus in that area, but it's the consistency, the compounding daily over decades that gets you the result you want, not the intensity 12-week burst of energy and focus. That might get you a step forward, but it's not going to help you long term. So that's not ultimately what your goal should be. And it's funny, that's how I feel about life, but that's how I feel about fitness now too. Is like that's why we have the daily over decades challenge. Like let's just let's focus on being consistent. Mix in some goals in there as well, so we still have reasons to push ourselves. But like, that's it. Like, just you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to like lift until your eyes are popping out or run until you die. And that was my much younger version of myself. Thought that's how you had to approach training. And you really don't. You just need to maintain the consistency, but still push yourself, and you're still going to see a lot of results.
Yeah, which also kind of negates a lot of the 6-week to 6-pack abs kind of routines and the cleanses that are always very short sighted. If you're just consistent over a long time, then you don't need to do anything like that.
Yeah, I got some good feedback on that recent podcast I did about like weight loss, like the weight loss mindset, and it's just so true, man. It's like everyone wants to just like go tackle it, and when I give like a plan for like here's Jerred's plan, it's a 2-year plan for you to lose the weight but never gain it back. It's like, but it will take 2 years. Nobody wants that. Nobody. Not a single person. Maybe a couple people like, and the only people who really I get the good feedback from are people who are already like really fit and healthy and understand this stuff. But nobody wants to do that. But it's unfortunate that that's what it takes. Otherwise, you are going to do, hey, I lost 50 pounds, and then it's like, okay, we're 6 months later and you gained 40 back. So was it worth it? Or maybe should you just try the slow approach? An activity in which you can recover from on a daily basis. Yep. But that's it on the topic. You got anything else?
Yeah, we've kind of taken a lot of liberties on that one.
Yeah. Let's roll into Meet Yourself Saturday. So what's this week's Meet Yourself Saturday, Joe?
Heavy load, short distance. So for max meters, you will carry 2 kettlebells if you have them. I guess you can do dumbbells, but in the front rack position for as long as possible. When you reach max distance, so failure of you can't carry them anymore, you will set them down and rest for 2 minutes. And then you're going to repeat that for 20, repeat that 20 times for max meters total. And sub, you may use dumbbells or barbell in the front rack. And yeah. So front rack carry, holding weights. We did not say sandbag on this one, even though I think we've gone over sandbag in the past before because it's still hard. You're still carrying it, but the front rack is not as hard as it would be for kettlebells, dumbbells, or a barbell because you definitely have to maintain a lot better form up here versus a sandbag. You can pretty much just hug. So keep that in mind. If you have to do a sandbag, then I'd say increase the weight, but I'm probably also just say don't use a sandbag.
You could put a sandbag in the front rack position. I mean, it'll go across the shoulders.
Handles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Form is the big one on here, and because once you reach failure, you like to me failure. Whenever I get into these front rack carries, is I know that my elbows are at a certain position, and once my elbows and my torso start to bend to a certain point, that's failure. Like I could probably slump over and keep going or something, but no, just set it down. That's failure. Rest your 2 minutes and then go for 20 times. And be careful for however you're doing this out and back wise, because like it says repeat 20 times. So you might be thinking, all right, I'm going to do 10 out and then 10 back. Well, your first 7 or 8, you're going to be carrying it a lot farther than you will your last 5 or so. So you might finish your 20 and still be a good ways away from your starting point.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. I mean, other than you just kind of mentioned it, but I think the front rack positioning is the most important thing. Like push yourself on this one, like in anything that's like heavy load and there's a distance involved, you can typically push yourself harder than you think than you can. So like really dig deep here, get to the meet yourself mentality in this workout, but let's do it in a safe way. So keep the elbows up, like Joe's saying, in that front rack position. Try not to sacrifice any of your integrity there, like end up in a bad position and hurt your upper back or something like that. So, that's basically all I have for this one. Push yourself and maintain good positioning in the front rack position.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Good luck with the Meet Yourself Saturday, and good luck living longer because you're doing concurrent training on a weekly basis. That's for all the athletes out there who are knocking it out. And again, if you're doing the 300 challenge, let me know in the Facebook group. I'd love to, see how all the athletes are doing and, chime in. We got some big prizes giving away at the end of the year for those who have maintained the consistency. It's been a really tough challenge, I'm sure, for a lot of people. If you are looking to get involved with the community, you can go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial, and we'll show you around, show you what the training's like. This training that can give you a 40% chance of living a longer life. We'll show it to you on all of our tracks, anyone that you join. But that's it for this week, guys. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.
Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.